Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So as always, everything I do is impromptu. I don't know where I'm going to go. I actually cut these wires here for something else, and then I thought, you know what, I don't feel like doing that. So this is a really pretty druzy. This is one of the first stones that I got from a friend of mine that worked for a local store here in Sedona, and we've got lots of stones and crystals. So it's just been sitting around in my box, and I thought, let's try it. So I thought, why not do a tutorial and see how it comes out? So you can do this with any stone, but this is a pretty little druzy. So to get started, I've cut myself 5 20-gauge square dead soft copper wires. Mine are in different lengths. You can do yours all in the same length. So the longest length is 8 inches. And then I went up 3 wires. So the next 3 wires are 6 inches. And then the last wire, which is going to sit on top, is 4 inches. And this is all going to be a surprise for me, equally for the rest of you. So I just thought I'd share my process, on how I create and what goes through my mind. I'm always going to give you lots of tips, tricks, and techniques to accelerate your journey in this magical, ancient art of wire. So before we get started, if you like my channel, please give me a thumbs up. That will let YouTube share more of my tutorials with other glorious wire wrappers. So I've marked the middle. So what you always want to do if you're working with different lengths of wire, so that when you're first starting out as a newbie, a beginner, it's really important to get into the habit of marking. And our brains and hands are completely working in opposite directions because we're new to it. We don't really understand everything unless you're, an architect and really understand measuring. So I would suggest, if you're working with different lengths of wire, that you always mark the middle of each, depending on what you're doing, so that you can line them up and that they're equal on top of each different length of wire. So what I'm going to do is I've cut myself some half-round wire. And if you've never seen half-round wire, it's simply a piece of wire that's been cut in half. That's why they call it half-round. So one part of it is slightly domed, where the round part was, and the other part is flat. And you always want the flat part against the stone. So I'm going to be doing a series of wraps here. Again, this is total artistic freedom, so I don't know how many yet, but we're going to get started. So I'm going to place the flat part of my half-round wire against the back of my core wires. So here are all 5 of my wires, and I'm just going to bring that over. Now this is 22 gauge half round, so it's very soft. So just imagine for a moment they've taken a piece of 22 gauge wire and cut it in half. So now it's half that gauge, right? And then I'm just going to hold right where I push the wire down, and I'm going to roll that wire over as I'm twisting my core wires, and then I'm just going to push it down. Because it's such a soft wire, it really do whatever works for you. You really don't have to crimp it down real hard, because you can just do that with your thumb. So I'm going to just make a series of wraps. And I'm just turning the piece. Then I'm going to come in with my tweezer nose, and I'm just going to push them together. Now I'm going to continue with this wire here, just to use up that excess, because I save all my scrap. And I'm going to get my flat nose. Let me get these pliers out of the way so my camera doesn't try to focus on everything on my board. And I'm just straightening those out on top. And now I'm going to come in, push them together, and very gently, because it's a soft wire, I'm just going to tap them down. And then I'm just going to continue to pull this guy over, slide them together, just getting him out of my way. And I'm going to push him around the back. If you notice, and this is for beginners, I'm always turning my work around to get in my best working position. So I'm looking at that, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm pushing the wire down with my finger on each rotation. I'm literally flattening it down against my core wires. Just pushing it down. And the thing with half round is you can slide it. So what I'm going to do is just get a little gauge right now and see how much I want this around the stone, and I definitely want more wraps. It's going to push that down, and I'm going to come in and very gently tap. And I'm just going to continue. I'm going to slide that up a little bit and take a look. And I definitely want more wraps. I'm going to come in, gentle tap, push them together. If you push too hard, you'll crimp that wire in the middle. Now, another tip is you can always come in on an angle with your plier, and that will help you a lot so that you're not pressing down in the middle of the wire and you're pressing on a diagonal so that you're putting equal pressure on each edge, just going up and down. If you come in right in the middle, so here's another tip, you're going to bend the middle of that wire. Okay, I'm going to take a look at that and see what we got going here. And I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Just want to really cover this portion of the stone. So I'm going to do 2 more wraps. Then I'm going to measure just to see, make sure that I'm still on center. Okay, so when you trim your half round wire, there are a lot of different explanations out there. I never allow the wire to come to the outside edge of the wire here. So this is the outside edge because that wire, that half round will tend to lift. So anywhere between 1/3 to 2/3 so that the wire can really nestle against your base wires without having the tendency to lift up. And then I'm just going to lift up on that one. And I'm going to get my needle nose this time. And I'm not crimping down real hard yet because I might need to slide that wire. So I know my top wire is 4 inches. So I'm looking at that and they look pretty dead center. So now I'm just going to come in one more time and I'm going to flatten. And I'm using my flat nose because it's got a wider jaw on it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape off. And I'm just thinking about all of this as I'm going. Then I'm going to measure the width of my stone. And I want my shortest wire on top. If all your wires are the same length, as I suggested in the beginning, then you don't have to worry about which one's on top because I'm going to use this as a decorative piece in here somewhere. I might connect it off. I don't know. This is all impromptu for me. So I'm looking at the width of my stone and it's pretty wide where I need to wrap around. Now, there are different ways to do this. You can pre-shape your wire in your hand. You can start with a U shape. This is 21 millimeters in width, and at its widest point, because it's not a symmetrical druzy, it looks like it's about 24 millimeters in width. So I'm going to get myself a tool. And I'm actually going to get my ring mandrel. And this is a steel ring mandrel. It's very heavy. And I'm just going to slide this down on here to see how much width. And that's pretty wide, right? So let's get all of these out of the way. So I'm just going to put this on here at center. And I'm going to hold both sides down. And I'm going to bring it around. And I'm not going to close it off yet because I want to see how it's going to fit around my stone. And that's looking pretty good. And I'm deciding on which side I want to be bottom and which side I want to be top. And because it's not perfectly cut or symmetrical, it's higher on this side, thicker here, thinner there, really paper thin over here, and super thick over here. So I'm thinking about where I can get the most coverage to wrap my stone. So I think that's looking pretty good. But I'm just going to flip it around again because this is a little bit more oval shape, but each side has a little bit more, well, one side has a little bit more of the stone sticking out over here. It's really hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down further. I can always bring my wires in. So I'm going to come down on the widest part of my mandrel and I'm going to squeeze those in. Pull it off. So I want to make sure I've got my shortest wire on top, and I do. So that looks good. So what I'm going to do now before I do anything else is I'm going to grab my shortest wire and I'm going to swing it just to the middle. I want them out of my way. And I'm just going to bring those to the middle. So that looks good. I like that. And you can see why I used 5 wires, because I've got a lot of the stone I need to cover, you know. So I'm just checking everything out. I'm thinking about what I want to do. Okay, so I'm debating on whether or not I want to wrap these with half round or if I just want to wrap them around my stone. And this is just my creative process. I'm looking at the back and I'm saying, do I want to swing these long wires up and only wrap these 3? So this is just how I roll. So let me take a look at that. And I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull in these back wires. So I'm just going to hold firmly right here where my wraps are, and I'm just going to very gently on top here swing these in just a little bit. I'm just getting a gauge on how my stone is going to sit in there. So I'm going to pop my druzy back down in here. That, I believe, was the widest point. Or was it this side? Yeah, it was this side. So now I'm going to turn it over and see how that's shaping up on back. Because like I said, it's not a calibrated stone. And I'm actually going to swing these in just a little bit more. Just using my thumb to cover the base of that stone. I'm kind of, it's like a little bit of a basket. I want to really catch that stone. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap the sides. So I'm going to get that piece of wire that I had here. This will be plenty for this side. And I'm just going to come here on my 3 core wires and I'm going to wrap the sides. I'm going to straighten that wire up and tuck it around the back. You always want to hold very firmly on all your core wires, especially when you have this many loose and nothing's keeping them together. If you're concerned, you can always come in and tape the ends just to keep your wires parallel. And I'm just rocking it in there, tightening it up really good before I cinch it down. And right now, the reason why I'm working with such a short end is I want to use this excess wire for the other side. So just taking advantage of it. And I'm debating on how many wraps I want. Now, I'm not going to pinch anything off yet. Let me see. This was the bottom. I'm just going to slide my wraps down to see how many I want. And I think 3 is good. I like the 3. I'm probably going to have it sit close to center of the druzy. So I'm going to cut off, and I'm going to do 2/3 of the length. And I'm going to slide it back up so I have some working room to cut off the other end. Oh my goodness, all this paraphernalia. Okay, I'm going to leave those loose for right now until I decide exactly where I want them. And then I'm just going to take this piece of wire and do the same thing, and I'll be right back. So I've wrapped both the sides, and what I'm going to do now, and this is a bit fiddly because the stone is so uneven, I'm going to push my 3 wires that I wrapped up here over just to get an idea of where I want to go with this. We can adjust a lot of this, but because the stone is so uneven, the biggest challenge is keeping it centered. So I'm going to cross these inside wires over a little bit more, and I'm just going to have to keep shifting that stone. And then I'm going to pull these together to see how much gap space I'm going to want. Okay. Just trying to get a feel. So I'm actually going to cross these all the way over and get them out of my way because they're in my way right now. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them yet. So let's take a look at that. Now, let's take these, pull them back a little bit, and bring these down. Just getting an idea. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these back. I'm going to do that. Now I can do this taking the stone out, but I happen to have it in there right now. Just using my thumbnail. I just want a gentle bend on it. Just a very gentle bend. That way, if I need to adjust my wires, it will be a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to slide these up. That's the nice thing about half round, especially if you're working with a 20 gauge. Okay. These guys in the back are in my way. All right, just making adjustments. This stone is uneven, as I mentioned, so just doing the best that I can. And this is how we learn. If you don't try, you don't learn. Just to keep lining them up. And 20 gauge square is so soft, it's really easy to manipulate. I'll be tightening down these wraps, or perhaps even taking them out. I don't know, just lining everything up. So you can see on my stone, it's got a flat side over here on top. Do you see that? How it kind of goes on an angle, and this side is round. So I'm just trying to center it up the best that I can. And I'm liking that. So I'm going to turn it around to the back. And these wires here, I'm probably going to take my stone out. Going to bring them in, just cross them over just a little bit more. Yep, I like that. This would actually be pretty too as the front. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze them together. And I'm doing that close to where the wires meet the top of the stone. So I'm just going to put my pliers in here. And I'm going to do a quick squeeze. And then I'll straighten them out. This one I need to bend a little bit more. So this is what we have on the back, which would make a really pretty front wrap. I mean, if I wanted to turn my stone around, which I'm taking a look at that, maybe I will, I don't know. As I mentioned, this is all just impromptu. These I'm thinking about connecting up and over here. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stone. Well, no, I don't think I need to. I'm just trying to think of how much wire is in my way for me to get the wraps I need around these two wires here. And I can simply do that by lifting up on these wires and letting my stone fall out. So let's do that. Now, instead of using half round this time, I'm going to use 28 gauge weaving wire. And I'm just going to cut myself about a foot. Not sure I need that much. Not sure it's enough because I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to even up my wire. So I find center. And I'm going to bring it over these two wires in the back. Get this out of the way so my camera will focus on what I'm doing and not what's in the background. And I'm going to squeeze these half rounds down. Now here's another tip. When we're moving our wires all over, sometimes the little legs that we cut on the half round can lift up. So you really want to double check and make sure that they're pressed down before you do anything else. Because sometimes if we wait too long, we can't get back in there later. So I am just putting my finger under here so I can support these wires because they're just dangling out here. And I'm going to do 2 wraps. And then I'm going to hold them firmly together. And I'm going to come around this wire here. And this is more of an intermediate to advanced wrap. But you know what? When I started out, I tried everything. I mean, some things were so over my head. I was like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe the shoe boxes of scrap wire I had 5.5 years ago. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it through the middle. Just turning this around. It's a little awkward. I just want to connect them, and then I'm going to bring it over to the opposite side. If you've been watching my tutorials for a while, then you should be familiar with this weave. So this wire's coming over the top. I'm going to bring it through the middle and to the opposite side. Then I'm going to come back up underneath this wire, and I'm going to wrap. You just got all these other wires in the way 2 times. And then I'm going to bring it back up underneath. Don't focus on these wires here, okay? You're only focusing on your 2 center wires. Then I'm going to wrap this one 2 times. And I'm going to cinch them up and line them up so my coils are not on an angle. I'm thinking about bringing these wires over the top. That's what's been going through my mind as I'm going through this creative process. So I'm going to do another set. So the wires are both coming out from underneath, from left to right. So I'm going to go back through the middle, push it down, and let it come over to the other side. Back through the middle, push it down, and let it come over to the other side. And now I'm just going to bring it up underneath and do 2 wraps. We're crossing the wires over. It's kind of like a zipper weave. And then I'm going to bring it back through and let that wire just sit on top. Where am I here? Oh boy, even my eyes play games with me. That's 1, 2, and come back around to complete that rotation. And then I'm just going to cinch them up. So see how that's like a little zipper weave? I'm going to leave these wires out here. I'm going to go ahead and pop my stone back in. So here's what we have. So now I'm looking at that and I'm getting all sorts of different ideas. You know, do I want to roll this over and, meaning these 2 wires in the back, do I want to bring them all the way over the front of the stone? Because these I'm going to do something decorative. I'm just not sure yet. So I'm just kind of getting all sorts of ideas of what I want to do here before I create my bell. And we'll be sliding these wires here over the stone and doing all sorts of fun things. So I'm looking at the length in the back just to give you guys an idea of what I'm thinking about and how these wires are going to fit as they go over the stone. So I need to cut them off in the middle. So I am going to bring them through, push them down, meaning I needed to cut them off. I'll explain that better here in a second. And I'm going to pop my stone out again so that I have working room so I can get in there. And I'm going to cut these off very close to the inside of that wire because I'm going to fold these over my stone. And I'm going to come around. I want them cut off in the middle where they will not be exposed. I'm just cinching them down on top of the wire. I need to get a better look because I can't see where that other little wire went. Okay. Now we're going to put this back in here. Okay. Just want to line it up the best that I can because it's got a wonky shape to it. I'm going to push these down in the back and make sure they're good and cinched in there. And I'm going to pull them over. And I've got to get these guys out of the way. They're in my way. So I am going to pull these down even more till I decide on what I'm going to do with them. Because at this point now, I really need to capture my stone. So I'm just going to pull that and let everybody hang out there, just like that. Now we're going to complete the bell. And it's going to be a very small bell. I don't want it really big because I really want all the attention going to the stone and the wrap. So I'm just pushing these down so I can squeeze them in a little bit better. Now at this point, I'm going to tape these together. So let me get some tape. Okay, so I've cut myself some half round wire. This time I'm using a 20 gauge half round because I really want to hold these wires together. And I'm just going to do several wraps until I can get the neck securely connected. So I have all 6 of these wires, 3 on each side. And I may cut these off here, the little 22 gauge half round that I use to keep those wires together. All right. So let's see what I want to do. So I'm going to now lift up on this, and I'm going to move these wires. I have to lift up on it a little bit more so I have some more working room. And I'm just going to move these out of the way, because I'm going to do something fun and decorative with those. I just don't know yet. So I just need to get them out of my way. And my stone is still going to be moving around in there because it's not fully connected yet. Now I'm going to bring these over and I'm going to flatten them over the front of the druzy. I'm going to really start connecting my stone. And I'm just lifting up on the wires with my fingernail here. Just coming around the edge of that stone. Just lifting up on them. Okay. I'm getting a lot more control over it now. Now I'm going to turn around, see how it's connecting with the stone in the back. I'm going to slide these down for now. And then I'm going to push that all the way down. So I'm going to take my tape off. And I'm going to pull these 2 wires back here. Actually, you guys, I'm going to separate them out. They're just so stacked up, it's hard to see which is where. There we go. These are my front. I'm going to cut some of the length off on this because it's in my way. Okay. Really pushing that down so I can get these wires separated out and away from each other. I'm going to make sure I got the right ones. And these should be my 2 back wires, and they are. All right. I hope I grabbed the right ones. I did. Now my stone isn't secure yet. I'm just going to be working on my bail. So I'm going to back out of this because I want to start wrapping my wires from the back where my bail is going to be. And I'm just using my fingernail to really rock that down in there as I'm turning the whole piece. And as I mentioned, I want a small bell. I'm putting tension on the half round while I'm keeping my finger against the core wires and just rolling it around. Okay, I'm twisting my wire So I wasn't paying attention because I was looking through the camera there for a second. So I'm just going to turn it around to make sure the flat side is facing down. Then I'm going to come up underneath it and scoop it out a little bit because it's still twisted back in here. So just straightening that out. Get that to wrap around there. There we go. Little correction there. I've got way too much wire here. I'm going to cut this off now. Cinch it down. Okay, now being 20 gauge half round, it's a thicker wire, and if you've worked with it, then you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just pushing down gently. I'm not, because this wire hardens up so much faster. Okay, so I'm still thinking about the whole front here. Haven't decided on what I'm going to do with these side wires, but I'm going to make my bail. And I actually thought about using these for the bail wires and just making 2 loops, which I could do that too. But I'm just going to swing this forward, and I just need enough of a bail because I want to kind of hide this bail a little bit to get my chain through. So I'm going to swing the legs through. See, it's kind of a little bit hidden. And then I'm going to pull on one side and pull on the other side. Don't want a big old bail back there. Now I'm going to cut this wire off that I completely forgot about because I don't need it. I'm going to roll off the front. Let me get my bent nose. Oh, where are they? Here they are. This is when these pliers really come in handy. And I just tuck that through the middle. Okay, so now I'm going to separate these. Pull one to the right and one to the left. And I'm going to lift up on these so I have some working room. And I'm going to roll that over the side of those core wires there. And the same thing over here. I need a thicker plier. Sometimes when we're working with a very small piece of wire, we need something with a bigger and a flatter jaw so that we can control that wire versus a little tiny needle nose. I'm just flattening that down against there and stretching it over. My stone is still super loose because I haven't connected it yet. Lining these up. And then I'm going to cut them flush to the back because I'm probably going to hide them. So I cut them flush right to the back. And I'm going to cut this one. And then I'm going to really make sure that they're crimped down against the neck. Okay, so now is the time to really capture the stone because it's just kind of like wobbling in here. So I'm going to lift up on these. I'm just as curious about how this is going to come out, probably as much as you guys are. And I'm going to swing them down towards me. And I'm going to lift up on these, just giving myself some room. And I'm going to separate them out. And then I think I'm going to scoop them. Kind of just saw that and said, let's scoop them. And I'll press them down. See, my stone wants to fall out of there because it's not connected yet, but we'll get it nice and tight here in a minute. Okay. Alrighty. You want to make sure that your square wire is on its edge. This one's turning a little bit. Not on its edge, on its flat side. So I'm going to lift up and I'm going to roll it back a little bit so it's sitting on its flat side. So I've scooped them. I'm still making all sorts of considerations because I'm going to connect these to those. So for right now, I'm going to, the flat side of the square, I'm going to just push it over the shoulder. And my stone is still wiggling around in there. So just the flat side. Now I can see it's turning on its edge. So I'm going to correct that by rolling it in the direction that it was turning on. So the flat side is sticking up. And I can still see on this corner here that it's not perfectly flat. Now that's better. And I'm just going to push that over the shoulder. And I'm going to let them come around back and just cross them over to get them out of my way until I decide on what I'm going to do. Now remember, this is an uneven stone, so I need to adjust it as much as I can before I secure anything in there. And I'm doing that by pushing on the stone. I'm shifting it to the left a little bit because with my eye, that's where I'm seeing it needs to go. Then I'm going to slide this side up a little bit. Always looking for the symmetry. Okay. And I'm going to slide my wraps down up here. I saw them slide up a little bit. I need a much thinner tip on my plier. Tools do matter. Not so much how much, buying the most expensive, but what you need to do is what matters. And shift that stone again until I connect it. Okay, so down here, you can see, I'm going to move this in and let it come flush up against this wire here, like that. And I'm liking that. Okay, so I need to connect these two wires here. So I'm going to get some weaving wire I'm going to use because it would be too many wires moving around. It would be a little bit more frustrating to try to do this with half round, but I could, because I've got a lot of gap in there. Let's do that. Let's get some 22 gauge half round. Don't need a whole lot, just enough to connect it. I'm gonna see, I got a lot of gap space here, so that's gonna work out perfect. And I'm holding both these wires very firmly with my thumb. I'm gonna pull that through very gently, because remember, they're loose right now. So I have to really brace them with my hand until I get them connected. Holding down on that wrap and those two wires there. See where my thumb is? Pushing down on those wires. And I'm really giving it a good tug. Now I'm getting more control over the wires, but I'm never letting my hand off of them, my thumb, so that I can keep them securely together and not jackknife my wire. And then I'm going to come around the single wire here, push that down, slide the bottom up, we get in there with the thinner tip. And I think for right now, I'm just gonna I'm going to do 2 wraps to tie it off, and I'm gonna leave this half round here because I'm not sure if I'm gonna use it yet. So over here, shift that stone over. I'm really starting to get a lot of control over my stone now. So I'm looking at this and thinking, do I want to swing this wire over there, or do I want to swing it down? And I think I'm going to swing it down. So I'm holding firmly where I have my shape here. I don't want a sharp bend yet because I'm debating on if I even want to tie off on it. So I'm just going to keep bringing this down. And I just had a visual, so I'm going to bring it all the way around. Just got to hold firmly because those wires in the back are not tied off. And then I'm going to tie off on this top wire here. Now, I'm not going to need this one, so I'm just going to cut it way deep down in there. And I'm going to roll off it and cinch it because I've got a lot of space in there. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm just going to simply do that with my finger. I'm just going to rock it all the way over. And see why I left this wire? Because I'm not sure. Will I be connecting off there? I don't know. So now I'm going to start lining stuff up again because I was really pushing on the back of my wires to hold everything securely down. And I don't really want to do anything over here yet because I may need to make adjustments. This one I'm going to pull down a little bit. Okay, so as before, I'm just going to push this over so that it's in line. Just want to make sure everything's lined up. Look at my shape there. Needs to have a little bit more of a curve. So I'm holding the wire here, and just with my thumb, I'm just putting more curve in it. And then I'm going to swing it over there because it's not an even stone, right? So where is my 22? Looks like I don't know what I did with it. So let's connect. My hand, I don't know what I'm doing here, you guys. Trying to think about the best way for me to go because I got wires all over the place. Okay, I'm going to feed it through this way. So I want all my length down on the bottom. I'm not going to need a whole lot on top. Okay, I don't have a firm grip on my wire, so you can see it keep wanting to coil up. I'm going to pull down here, pull up here. I'm really not doing this the right way, but you know, I'll do it. Let's get you out of the way. Now I can hold firmly and pull tight. Just want to make sure they're lining up evenly. Just need to hold those down. I've got these little crystals underneath that I was hitting. Okay, I want to line these wraps up, make sure that they're in line with these over here. And that looks good. Oops. I should have come through the third time to get my 2 wraps down here because I've only got 3 here. If I come around again, that'll give me 4 wraps. So which is the easiest way for me to back out? I'm trying to think how I can push this wire out, and I'm going to use the shortest wire to do that with. And half round is not like weaving wires. You got to make sure that as you're backing out, you're pulling it out from the flat side. There we go. I can straighten that all out. Now I'm going to come through from my 3rd wrap and come up underneath this wire to tie off with 2. And then I'm just going to pull that in, hold those 2 wires down. I'm sure you guys have gathered by now that I have a cold. I had a cold for over a week. I'm just grateful it's not the body flu. I already had that 2 months ago. And I feel okay. It's just the, you know, the yuckies. And the funny voice. And that nasty, nasty dry cough. So I've got my 3 wraps. I need to back out of this one. And I need to, as before, pull this wire. Doing it with my thumb. And I want to get symmetrical as much as possible. And then I can get this wire up and out of the way. So my stone is a lot more secure now. Slide that down. This one's going to go up a little bit. And then after I tie these off, I'm going to secure it in the back. That's 1. And that's 2. So let's get this guy out of here. Coming down deep, deep, deep inside that. So I don't have anything sticking out. Okay, so here's what we got in the front. And I'm still thinking about what I want to do there. But my stone is really getting captured now. That's that little flat side down there on the bottom. I may turn these in. I don't know. Just going to set this down on my board and push. Okay, so let's take care of the back. So what we're going to do with the back is we're going to fold these over. We're going to connect them right here on these back wires. I'm just going to fold them over. And then I got to make sure that I'm maintaining my symmetry in the front. And I can see that I wasn't on the flat side of that wire. So I'm just going to fold them over. Then I'll turn around and make sure that I didn't change things too much. Roll my stone to the left. So straightening out my bail. I know it looks really weird right now, but we'll see. Hopefully you guys didn't hear my phone ring in there. I'm wondering if you do. All right, so let's connect these guys. Want to make sure they're lined up the best that we can. And I think down here, I'm going to slide this up a little bit here and this one up a little bit here. Just trying to, because the stone is not symmetrical, meaning that's not really the right word, but it's not a perfect shape. It's not a perfect oval. I'm always trying to think of how I can compensate for the high, low sides, the flat sides, the angular sides, because it's a very organic stone. So I'm probably not going to use these. So I'm going to come in with weaving wire here. And I'm going to come up underneath. And if I don't have gap space because I pushed it down, you can always lift up on these wires. So I think the first thing I want to do is I want to create 3 coils down here on the bottom leg. Now I've got 28 gauge weaving wire that I'm using. And I'm just going to slide this all the way up. So I'm just going to keep pushing it all the way up back here, because I want to connect these wires through here. I'll hold very firmly here, and I'm going to tighten that up. That coil is too loose. And I wanted 3 wraps, so now I'm just pulling that wire away. And I'm looking for my favorite tool, which I can't find right now. It's my wood carving tool. Here it is. So if you've been watching me for a while, you know I use this all the time to lift up on wire, which is why it's got a little bend on the tip. And I'm just going to lift up on this wire on the back just to give me working room. I'm just going to push up on it. That way I can come up underneath it. Now I'm going to slide these up. And I'm going to pull that through there good and tight. Move this guy up and out of the way. And I'm going to feed that wire through and wrap over both these wires. Uh-oh, I think I got in the wrong position there. Okay, I see what I did. Just need to get out from underneath that wire there. There we go. So I'm pulling it really tight. And I'm going to wrap over those twice. Maybe 3 times. I don't know. You always want to keep a healthy loop when you're feeding your wire through. If you're just starting out, slide these together. I think I'll do it 3 times. Just to make sure they're really secure and connected. And then I'm going to wrap around the leg wire here 3 times. Open it up so I can really get it in there. And I'm just going to leave that weaving wire hanging out. I'm going to come here, squeeze these all together so we have a nice, clean, seamless coil. I'm going to come way up underneath, and then I'm going to cinch it down. Okay, so we have this. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll connect these and think about what we're going to do with that, and then we'll finish decorating in the front. Okay, so it's just It's kind of uneven up there. And that's because I might do something with these wires to hide that. And we've got a nice quasi-hidden bail, not this huge bail. It all looks pretty wonky and funky right now, but it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. Okay, so I'll do this off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, so I secured both corners. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rock these over, almost as if they're parallel to each other. Straighten this one out a little bit. So I'm just rocking them over because I'm going to swing them back down to make it more decorative and pretty on the back, and then I'm going to connect them again. So now, right, you just want to keep turning your work around and make sure everything looks equal and the same. And right here, where the wire is crossing over, I'm going to put my thumb right in front of it. And I'm just going to swing, I'm holding very firmly, and I'm going to swing it around. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, very firmly, and I'm going to swing it around until they line up right down in here. Just need a little bit of a sharper bend on that side. That I can just do with my plier. Okay, so what we're going to do is cut some of this length off so I can get a better visual of what I've got going on here. I'm going to push this back, kind of line them up just to see how they're looking. And then we're going to connect them right here in this corner, and we're going to loop them in. So all you want to do is make sure you know how to connect your wires. You can use half round, you can use weaving wire, is that you lift up underneath that wire so that you have working room as you're wrapping around. So I'm going to connect these two corners here, meaning this corner to this wire. Just going to fold that in a little bit more. And I'll be right back. So you want to definitely wrap, either use half round wire or use weaving wire like we did up here, and connect. And I'm just looking at this. Kind of turning that corner up a little bit. Okay. So I did 4 wraps, and I have a tutorial on how to do wraps without tying off on your, loose leg wires. You'll see how these are tied off up here. Then we wrapped around 3 times, and then we tied off down there. Well, this is called hide your wire, and I have a tutorial on that, so you might want to check that out. It's a really cool technique if you've never done it before. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make loops, and I don't need them that big. I just want 2 little tiny loops. So I'm going to first of all cut these down so I can see how much wire I have, and then I'm thinking about 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to eye that. Just want a little itty bitty loop. Always take off a little bit at a time, because as we all know, you can't add wire back on. So I'm just going to pinch this one down just a rabbit's hair. Take a look at that, and then I'm just going to get my pliers. You can use round nose, you can use half round, half flat. Those are my favorite for making loops. And I'm just going to come in with my plier, and I'm going to make a very small loop. Don't want anything catching on that. Just turning that in to itself. So we have that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to get in a better working position, coming right on the tip of that wire. And I'm just going to start turning it in to itself. Then I'm going to grab the tip and roll it in. And you can always come in with your plier and just squeeze it in if you're having difficulty. That's really pretty. This could definitely be, and I just want to let you guys know later, I'm going to probably come in and change these. It's just how I do things. I look at something and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do just single wire wraps around these instead of tie off. But it's very pretty on the back, and it would be prettier to me, nicer looking, because if you wanted to wear it on both sides, you could. You could absolutely do that because that's so pretty there. But I just think it would be a lot nicer with maybe 6 wraps right here, and then I would hide the wire like I did down here so you don't see any coiled wire. So now we still have to do these and these. So these I rolled up. We've still got that half round there, and I rolled them up real tight. So all I did was just kept pushing them. Then I'm going to come in with my plier because I want them even tighter. And I'm just going to squeeze them even closer together. So that's swinging this wire up. Okay, see how it's swinging it up? And then I'm going to match up the length, make sure that they're on the square side. I can see that this side is longer. So I'm just going to come and take a little bit off, then get a visual on it. I'm going to tilt this up a little higher so that they make sure that my little loops in my wire there, because it's going to change in a minute as we swing these down. So see how uneven the stone is? So I'm constantly looking to compensate for that. I'll probably bring these down here to maybe, I don't know. I'm just constantly looking at how I can, you know, make this look more symmetrical. So up here on the neck, and I'm just looking at that right now before I make my loops down here, I'm going to get, because I've got some good gap in here, I'm going to get my needle nose, and I'm just going to pull this wire up and turn it in, just like that. I'm just going to turn it in up and over the stone. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I've got good gap, so I'm going to come from the other side and turn it in. I'm going to turn it around so I can see what I'm doing, holding my bail. And that looks pretty cool. Just change the whole look on it a little bit. So I'm just going to flatten that down a little bit on there. Bring this over the stone. And it's giving it a little bit more, it's creating the illusion that it's a little bit more centered, you know. And we still got to do something with these guys. So let's finish these off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my round nose in here. And I want it, the round nose to be on the outside. I'm just going to use it as a tool to hold that position of that loop so that I can swing this wire around to where it's flush with the inside frame wire here. So we have that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, but I've got to get in a different working position. So I'm going to hold right here. And using my thumb, I'm going to start swinging this wire around and in until it comes to the inside of that frame wire. So we've got something like that. Now I'm going to really pitch it down and in, and this one even more. Okay. I need my flat nose. I'm going to round this out because I'm just getting a visual of what I want to do here. I'm going to squeeze that in and squeeze this in. So I remember these loose half rounds. This one I've got to bring it out. So I'm going to lift up on this just to give me some working room because I don't want to twist it. This is half round. So I can come up underneath that. Remember I said I don't know if I'm going to use those, so I'm going to leave them there. Doesn't hurt anything except on occasion get in our way. So I'm going to connect these. And we'll be done here shortly. And I can see that no, that's fine. I'm going to pull these down over the stone too. See the big gap in there? There's nothing wrong with that. But I personally, for my taste, I don't like that. So I'm going to feed this through up and underneath. And if I press too hard down on my wire, which I did, I'm going to come up underneath and lift this wire up. Give myself some working room. And I'm going to wrap twice. I'm going to cinch those down really good. And then I'm going to flatten them. That's all I want is 2 wraps there. You can do as many as you like. It's your piece, how you visualize it to be. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Looks like I still got good gap space. So I'm going to wrap twice. Want that wire to be slid up. Get it good and tight in there. Holding very firmly on my base wires. There we go. And then I'm going to cut it. Okay, so now I'm going to push everything down. These I'm going to tilt down, and then we'll finish up here. And this is my creative process this morning. You know, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to push that over the stone. So I just kind of folded that wire over the stone closer to this wire here. I'm going to do the same thing over here as I'm pushing it over with my plier closer to the inside of the wires. Sharpen that up a little bit. Straighten that up. Now my stone is really tight in here. So I'm looking at these. Want to pitch this corner up. Always looking at symmetry. Now I'm going to roll my legs in. Want to make sure they're even in length. Everybody has their own way of, visualizing. I can definitely see this one right here on the right appears to be just a hair longer. So I'm just going to shave that off. And then all we're going to do is curl them in, just like we did on the back. That's pretty. That could totally be the front of the stone. And then have them turn it over when you're displaying it and have a surprise. So I'm going to roll these in like I did before, a very tiny, tiny loop. And I'm going to come off the tip of that. And I'm going to roll it in to itself. And I'm going to stop there until I get this one done to see how they're lining up. I may trim off that tip a little bit. Just looking at that as I'm going. So let's see what we got going here. Roll that in. This one might be a little long. We're going to see. I'm going to squeeze it into itself. I'm going to use the flat nose to do that. So I'm just going to roll it a little bit more and then squeeze it in and see if I need to open it up and trim it. And I don't. I'm just going to squeeze that down. and flatten that out. Because I've got all this opening here where there's little pits and valleys where those, so many of those tiny little quartz crystals. And then I'm just going to push it down. So that is our front. We're almost done. So let's tighten these up right here. And how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to get my plier and I'm going to push them down and flatten them against the outside frame here. And the same thing over here. I'm just going to push it down and flatten it over that frame. So they're nice and tight and all that gap space is gone. And just make sure they're evened up. This one needs to come down more. So I'm just going to very gently, I'm just pushing, holding very firmly, but always looking for that symmetry. So that's our front so far. I need to adjust my bail. So what are we going to do with these? Well, that's another story in and of itself, isn't it? So I think I'm just going to pull them down. And I'm not sure if I just want to bring them around the back and cut them off and tie them behind the bail. I don't really think I want to do a whole lot more up here anymore. And I just caught that this wire needed to be moved in. So I'm looking at all that right now. You know, I'm going, okay, what do we got going on here? And I think the purpose of all of these tutorials for me, you guys, is really looking at technique. Instead of just, I want to make that, what are all the techniques for me to achieve, you know? I'm just saw that this one was too far out. Remember, this stone is not even. I'm going to push this one in a little bit more. And it's just changing the design. When I pulled down on these, I stretched my inner wires out, so I'm just going to push them in. I'm always going to be compensating and working with what I have. So I'm just going to try something and see what I think. So I'm just going to pull this one around. And I'm thinking about tucking it in right here in the middle. And this one around. Gives it kind of an interesting look, doesn't it? I'm like, oh, okay, I'll talk myself into that. Pull that around. Just going to let these cross over into mumble jumble in the back. And then I think I'm going to tuck them in. Yeah, it's a pretty busy piece, I'll tell you that. I'm just pushing things down with my nails. I'm going through the entire thing and just making sure that I can get as equal as possible. So before I do cut off too much wire, I'm just going to cut some off right now to get an idea of how and where I want to tuck these. Because I kind of like that a little bit, that little crown effect on the bail. And I have to have enough room to tuck both. So what I'm going to do is these up here on top, I'm going to lift up because that bail is really small. So I don't have a whole lot of room. I'm going to lift up on these. I don't need a whole lot, but I'm going to leave more than what I need until I can see what I'm going to need. I like that twist in the wire there. I like the way that twisted look looks there on top. So I'm just actually twisting it a little bit more. So I know I'm not going to need that much length to tuck it in. So I'm going to come back. Probably not going to need that much either, but I like to do a little bit at a time because I can't put it back on. Okay, let's get these out of the way. They're going to be pushed down, making working room. And I am going to swing this in just to see how much length I'm going to need. I can already tell that might be a little long. And I'm pushing it down on an angle. Instead of trying to tuck it directly up underneath there, I'm pushing it on an angle to the inside of the bail. And I'm going to come in while it's still open and I have room. And I'm going to trim that off, and with my flat nose, I'm going to cinch it down. And then the same thing over here. I'm turning it down towards the inside, downwards into the bail. I'm going to squeeze it in. Then I'm going to come in with my plier. Cut that off. And I'm going to use my flat nose because I have more control over that little short piece of wire. So they're actually coming like this, okay, behind the back of the bail. And they're meeting like in a little point. So now I'm going to really cinch them down just to make sure they aren't going to go anywhere. So we've got that. That's pretty cool. Now, the same thing with these, they're just going to come down further into the bail. They're going to follow these wires. And I know I'm not going to need a whole lot. But I need to get them lined up. So I'm going to line them up to these wires here. And see how much wire that is? I don't need that because I've got this little tiny little bit of width on that bell, but I'm going to pre-shape that wire. And then I'm going to trim it back. And then before I even cinch it in, I'm going to do this side. I'm going to pre-shape it, fold it in towards the inside of the bail, lining it up. Get my cutters. Now I'm going to look at the length of both of these. Look at how they're lining up right here. And that turned out pretty nice there. I'm going to push this guy up a little bit closer. That's better. It'll be interesting to see how this is going to look once I oxidize it. So we did a lot of shifts and changes. I'm going to slide these up. You know, you want to go through your piece after you do it and just really look around and you know, check things out and see what changes you need to make. So I'm going to go ahead and cinch this off, and I'm just coming off the wire itself, pushing it towards the inside of the bail. So it's hidden away beautifully, and we've got this nice little chevron pattern in there, which is probably difficult to see from the way I'm trying to show you in the camera. I'm just going to flatten everything down, but it's really pretty. The wires are creating like a chevron look. So there you go, everybody. I know this is probably very challenging for anyone that's just starting out, but it's really good to learn the techniques. I promise you, technique is everything. That is what's going to accelerate your journey in this magical, ancient art of wire. I'll continue to make adjustments. I'm going to take these out, rewrap them. I'm going to roll my bail forward a little bit to see how I'm just like looking at everything saying, I don't want that pitch so far back. So I'm just making adjustments. I didn't want a big, pardon me, I didn't want a big loop, you know, this big roundness on it. I wanted it more tapered. So please give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, I'm just making sure everything's good and tight. I may come in and move these wires around here a little bit. You know, I'm just looking at all of that and saying, do I want to make some more changes? Do I want to shift my wires around? You know, I'm just playing around and looking at that. And I probably will. I'll probably continue to make changes until I'm satisfied. But I think it's going to look pretty cool by the time I oxidize, polish. Thank you all so much for being a part of this magical ancient art of wire. Have a magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.